Hi, I'm Casie Bryant with AllOnGeorgia, and I'm sitting down with Dr. Julia Houston, who is a Board of Education candidate on the Republican ticket. Thank you, Julia, for taking the time to talk with us. I'd like to start off first with you introducing yourself to everyone. Tell us a little bit about your educational background, your job experience. Just let us know who you are.
Thank you, Casie. I am, like you said, I'm Julia Houston, and I am a Chattooga County graduate, and also I am a professor of early childhood education at Shorter University. I have almost 25 years of public school experience as an educator, so I have an extensive education background, and this was just an opportunity to possibly give back to the community at this point.
What made you decide to run for Board of Education?
Well, like I said, that it is an opportunity that I can give back. I have an education background, but also I'm not teaching in Chattooga County, so it's an opportunity that I could serve on the board.
What made you decide to run on the Republican ticket?
I'm a Republican.
Okay. Would you define yourself as a fiscal conservative?
Yes.
The big question that everybody in the community is talking about is the fact that Chattooga County currently operates on a 4-day school week. Do you support the 4-day or the 5-day school week?
What I would like to say is that I support what is in the best interest of our students in Chattooga County. And as you're aware, we do have high poverty in Chattooga County. We have students with a lot of needs, which is, that's in a lot of systems. I feel like one of the things that our system does is they only attend 150 school days out of the school year, as opposed to 180 in most other school systems. And I think that needs to be looked at. The school calendar does need to be looked at.
Okay. What are some of the biggest factors for you on the decision with deciding what's best for the students? What all do you look at?
You have to look at the needs. You have to look at the needs of the community, the needs of the children that attend the schools, and the school itself. Every school it's a little different. You can't even compare Menlo with Lyerly because
right.
the schools are different. And so you have to look at the needs of the community at large and the students that actually attend the school to determine needs. You would need to talk with principals, with teachers. Teachers are very knowledgeable. They're the ones that work daily with those students. You have to talk with parents and also our business leaders. We want, in Chattooga County, we want students that are leaders and that can leave Chattooga County schools and go into high-paying tech jobs and business operators and go to college. We want them to be prepared and to be able to work in our workforce.
What do you think it would take to go back to a 5-day? Would there be a process in which, over a set period of time that we would be discussing it, and how would the resources be allocated to finance the extra day?
That's a great question. I think it would have to be a process. I don't think that you could just say, okay, next year we're going back to 5 days. I think you would have to, as the board, the leaders in the school system would have to look at, you'd have to look at bus routes, you'd have to look at finances, you'd have to look at impact on parents. And I think it would also be a process of talking to the community and listening to their concerns. I know there are a lot of people that do like the 4-day. It works well for their family, so you would need to talk about what their concerns are and how this would impact them.
If Chattooga County was to go back to a 5-day week, do you see any negative impacts on the school system or the community, or do you see a possibility of an increase in property taxes?
You mean to have to fund the 5-day
Yes,
week?
ma'am.
That's a possibility. Of course, I'm not privy to all of the financial dealings with the board, but in having looked or examined the expenditure reports that are posted at the Georgia Department of Education website, Our transportation, just as an example, in Chattooga County, our transportation costs on a 4-day week is higher than all the surrounding areas, except for Walker County. So I think we could look at those things and find out why. Why is our transportation so high? Are we really saving money? What would it cost? I think you would have to look at what would it cost to go back to the 5-day week. It could be that if routes were changed and students were on the bus less, would it mean it's possible that wouldn't add to that cost that we already have. There would be some operating costs. It would not change. Of course, your biggest or largest expenditure for any school is your instruction, your teachers, and that it would not change with instruction.
Do you see, speaking of instruction, would you see any need for a reduction in the number of teachers or programs, or would you be supportive of any of that?
No, I would not. And I said that very quickly without thinking of it. I don't know why we would want to reduce the number of teachers that we have. I think that's something else that we could look at. The biggest impact for a child educationally is that teacher in the classroom. And I don't know of any reason why going back to a 5-day week that we would want to reduce those resources in our classroom. That is so important to keep those in place.
How familiar are you with the current school system budget?
All of that information is online at the Georgia Department of Education's website, so you can go on and pull your school's expenditure report. You can look at cost breakdowns. You can look at how much is spent for instruction. You can it takes you all the way down to per student. It's called per FTE. You can look at how much is spent on transportation. So each category it's something you can go back and look at. You can also pull it up for a number of years, so I have familiarized myself with that information.
What experience do you have with large, complex public budgets? And what will be your process to determine if the budget is good for the students and also good for the taxpayers?
Well, I can say that I don't have experience with a large, complex, public budget because I've never served, in that capacity before. It's something that I would feel that I would have to educate myself on.
It should be the goal of all government bodies to operate as fiscally and as efficiently as possible. In what ways can the Board of Education become more efficient?
I'm not sure that this would really answer the question of efficiency. One of the goals that I see as the board is to become very transparent and to let the community know not just what we're doing, but why we're making certain decisions. I'm not sure that would make it more efficient. Right. Necessarily, but I do think it's important that the community knows, if they're remaining on a 4-day week, why are they remaining on a 4-day week? If the transportation cost is larger or their figures have gone up, I think it's important that the community knows and understands why those numbers are what they are. I mean, there can be very good reasons why, that they spent $100,000 in textbooks. And right. We might think that's a large figure, but I happen to know that textbooks are very expensive.
Yes, ma'am.
And even though I know a lot of it is on the Chromebooks, but we know for technology is very expensive. But if you break those numbers down, if you tell the community, well, we have one for every student in the schools, and it costs X number of dollars for one Chromebook, and we have 800 students in this system that are using them, then those numbers begin to make more sense. That's something I know that's still not really answering the question of efficiency. I know that the board meets once a month. I don't see any issues with the efficiency of what they're doing. The board, I think that they're paid maybe a certain figure. I won't quote that figure because I may be wrong. Per meeting, I'm not sure that that's an issue. I don't think that that's right. The problem with the board. I think we're looking at the school system and being efficient as a school system. Well, I think it's efficient the way they do it. I think it needs to be more transparent.
Yes, ma'am.
In what they do, and that we need to garner more support and input from our community.
You brought up technology, and technology is a big issue in education these days. What do you think about or know about the current state of technology in the school system, and what improvements need to be made, in your opinion?
For me to really fully answer that question, I would have to know all of what's in the schools. I know that they have Chromebooks. I read in the paper that the school systems have Chromebooks. I do work with a number of schools currently, and I know that that is the common technology of today, that students have Chromebooks as opposed to textbooks, and they all have something to operate on. I can see it as partially being a training issue. Teachers need opportunities to get to work on new technologies and be up to date, as well as our students. Our students need, those opportunities to use those technologies. This is probably a pie in the sky kind of answer, and I don't know if it would ever come through the school system, but I would like to see those Chromebooks actually go home with students and have ways that they can access. We're asking students to do even some of their homework with the technology, and they don't all have access at home.
Right.
So that's actually what I would consider one of our largest problems, is that we use it at school. The students don't always have the access at home. We think in this day everybody has Wi-Fi, but they don't. They don't all have that.
And
access.
even in our small community, internet access is actually a problem still, with just having good high-speed internet connection in certain areas in the community.
Absolutely, yes.
In your opinion, what has the current Board of Education done well over the last 4 years?
I think they've done a fabulous job with the buildings. We have some buildings in the community that we can be very proud of, and that I think it goes a long way towards helping our students feel pride in the school system that they attend, to have those new buildings. So I think that's one thing that they have done really well. I think they've operated well together. As a team, you don't see dissension from the board. You don't see them, I can remember, this is a long time ago, and it wasn't with the Board of Education, but there were two public figures in Chattooga County that didn't always play well together.
Right.
And so that's kind of difficult when it comes from a public office. You want to be able to look up to them. And so I think that they do support one another and work well together.
What do you think the board has done poorly, and how would you go about changing that?
I don't want to say poorly, but one thing I would like to see change is allowing more public input. I know that's a little scary, and they don't want meetings that go on forever, but I think there are a lot of great ideas out in the community. We need business owners and parents that have really great ideas or needs to be able to state those concerns or questions or ideas in some place that they need a forum to be able to state those ideas and be heard.
Would you support, say, 30 minutes before or after a board meeting to, like, a lot of people, I cover a lot of different political meetings, and people don't understand the rules of order or the process that are political meetings, so they don't stick around for public comment, or they don't know when they can speak, when they can interject. And would you be willing to say 30 minutes after?
Oh, absolutely. I think that would be wonderful. I like the idea of being able to even have a forum where we can invite teachers to give us what's really going on. Your teachers, they work hard, and they deserve to be heard as well. So it would be nice to hear, what's happening from teachers' viewpoint, and even from students. I've heard from some students. I have grandchildren that attend Chattooga County schools, and they're really against going back to 5 days. They hate the idea of it. They've only experienced the 4 days. But it's nice to hear. We need to hear what their thoughts and their ideas are as well.
What do you believe the biggest challenges facing the Chattooga County Board of Education will be in the next 4 years?
I think if we look at the calendar, I think that is a little bit of a contentious issue right now, and you brought it up several times.
Yes.
It is a concern. There are people that firmly like, only the 150-day calendar. There are people that believe it's not in the best interest of our students. So I think that if a change is made or if a change is not made, I feel like that issue needs to be addressed one way or the other. I think that's one of the challenges. I think another challenge that we'll be facing in this system, and this is across the state of Georgia, we're looking at teacher shortages. And so I think Chattooga County is going to have to be very proactive in ways to attract and retain really good teachers in this system. So I think that those will be some of the challenges that we'll face.
Since you announced your candidacy, how many board meetings have you attended, and do you regularly attend school functions or games, and do you feel like that's an important part of being a board member?
I'm trying to think. Since I've announced my candidacy, I do not think that I've been to any of the board meetings since that time. I was out of town, I know, for one, and I don't think they've had one this month. So the reason that I haven't attended a lot is because of school, because of my work function and some of the events that I attend there. The answer is yes. I do think it's very important to attend school functions. I want to be very clean and honest that I haven't attended a lot of particular school functions.
What are your goals as a school board member?
I would really like to put a focus on academics in our educational system. I would like, as I mentioned earlier, I would really like to make the board a part of the community so that community feels that they have input and that they can come to the board and state concerns or state questions or ideas. We would really welcome ideas from the community. It doesn't mean that you have to do everything everybody tells you, but there are some folks out there with really good ideas, solutions for problems that we may be experiencing. I would like to really see a connection. I'm not saying there's not a connection, but really see a strong connection between the school system and our local business owners. I think that there's a lot of strength in our local business owners and our school system, and really doing a lot of partnerships with those in that area.
Are you familiar with Chattooga's CTAE programs and the businesses that they do work programs with? How do you feel about those? I mean, like the Mohawk internships and the internships at Chattooga.
I think it's absolutely wonderful that they are doing that, yes.
Is it your intention to replace Superintendent Linderman?
No. I mean, you can't. Mr. Linderman has a contract for the next 3 or 4 years, so no. That's a great question. I think that's a question that needs to be asked, but absolutely not. That's not my personal intention, and I've actually not heard the board members discuss that either.
What makes you qualified to be a school board member?
I think first and foremost that being a member of the community, and that I have grandchildren that attend the system. Secondly, I have a number of years in education, a strong background in education, and I do work in that area now.
And why should people vote for you?
Because I feel very passionate about educating our children in Chattooga County. I think that's so important. That's our ticket and our key out the poverty door, and we have some wonderful children in the system, and so that's fine.
This year, with 20 of 24 test scores going up in those areas where that success team is going out and teaching, would the success team of Chattooga County, would that be something that you would wish to continue to fund? Do you see the importance of it, or is it something that you would consider dissolving?
And what I would have to say is I honestly do not know enough about what they actually do to be able to make an educated comment about that. So if I were to say, yes, we need to continue it, no, we don't need to keep our success team, it would be based on outside information. And that's one of those places where I feel like the board could communicate, I've had some people ask me, just because I'm in education, what does the success team do?
Right.
And I honestly couldn't answer that question. And I've asked some board members, and they can't give that answer either. So I
Okay.
feel like we need to know what their, exactly what their job function, what their role looks like, how they've really impacted test scores, things like that. So the answer would not really be yes or no. It would really be based on having that information. I feel like every decision that the board makes needs to be based on the best interest of our students. And you have to get a lot of information to be able to make those really informed decisions. And so, and that's the purpose of the board. The purpose of the school system is to educate our children, is make sure that they're prepared to go out in the world, and the board member or the board itself should be to support that in happening. So if the school system needs something for financial operations, the board has to look at it. Of course, they're trying to balance between the community and the school system. The school system may say, we want several million, $100,000 for something over here. And the board may say, oh, we don't have that much money. We can't do that. So there is that balance, but the board is really to support every decision that the board should make. I mean, this is where my passion is, should support your teachers, it should support your leaders in the school. It should really come down to the final question, is this in the best interest of our students? And I think we can answer every one of those questions with, is this in the best interest of our students? You ask about the military. Should we raise the military? I think the answer to that question honestly would be, if it's in the best interest of our students, then the answer would have to be yes. Because can we say that, can Mr. Houston and I say, well, we just really can't pay an extra $50 on our tax bill when it's children suffering? And I'm not saying that, I'm raising the tax bill, but how much are our kids worth? So I feel like all of those answers should come down to that final.
What criteria are you going to use to decide, is this in the best interest of our students? What do you evaluate to make your decision? Is it test scores? Is it student attendance? Is it, what do you use?
All of those things. I think our attendance is definitely one. And that's very important, because if students aren't at school, they're not learning, at school. Our test scores is definitely another thing. Also based on really strong research. For example, there is a lot of research in the area of poverty and how poverty impacts the community and what schools can do when they work with students that live in poverty. So I think putting those best research practices into place, I mean, you can always take, trying to think of a good example. I'm trying to stay away from the 4-day versus the 5-day, but that's the one that comes to mind. If you look at that Monday that students are out of school, and you say, okay, how does this impact our students at large? Is this in the best interest? What does the research say about poverty? Where do these, what's happening to these children on that Monday? If we ask ourselves all those questions and be really honest about the answers and think about everybody, I think we have some clear answers to what we need to do. There are people there are families in the community and that really like the 4-day week, and they have resources. They work with their kids on that Monday. They don't always realize it, but they do a lot of things with their children on Monday. But I think we have to step back sometimes and look at our community and how it's impacting our community. I get really passionate. I mean, that's something I feel very strongly about. I do feel that we call it a 5-day versus 4-day. I call it 150 school days versus 180. But it's also, students are missing that Monday instruction. I think for our very lowest, our students that are in the low socioeconomic bracket, I think that has the biggest impact on them. And And you've heard school board members talk about, well, we have a high poverty in Chattooga County, and that's why we don't have great test scores. But what we've got to do is stop making excuses and saying, we know we have high poverty. This is what we've taken on. This is what the school board's taken on, the people that work in Chattooga County. So we've got to say, these are our kids. What can we do to help them? How can we serve these students and do the best that we possibly can? And I think you asked what criteria. That's one of the criteria that I would measure it against. But like you said, attendance, test scores, and look at strong research-based practices as well.
On the 150 versus the 180 day, I had a teacher that sent me a question that wanted to ask. They wanted to know if Murray County goes 160 days. Now they are on a 5-day school week, but they start after Labor Day and they end around May. So they're on a 160-day school week. Would that be something you would be considering? I mean, if we return to 5-day to still have a shorter year?
When you talked earlier about kind of easing back into a full calendar, that might be a good way to do it. Like 1 year, maybe, add some days, and next year add a few more days. I really envision a full school calendar, but it might need to be, our students have not experienced that in so long. I think easing back into that over a period of time would absolutely, probably, if you added 5 days,
Right.
people would probably wouldn't be too bad, and you add another 5 days, and
It wouldn't be as abrupt.
it wouldn't be this abrupt change. I think that's going to be kind of difficult if you look at going, okay, next year we're going 180 days. I think that would be a difficult transition for a lot of people and a lot of children.
Tell us a little bit about days in the classroom as opposed to instructional seat time, because we hear this term seat time a lot in this discussion of 4-day versus 5 days. So what's your take on it?
One of the ways that Chattooga County tried to offset only going 4 days is the state has requirements for how long or the number of days that students are in school. And so one of the ways that Chattooga offset that was increasing the school day. So we know that we do have a longer school day, and that's to help offset the number of hours. So I think one of the factors, and I can't say this because I'm not the one that has actually said this, and I think you'd have to ask the person that has actually said this, but they say that our students get more minutes in the classroom. But if you multiply, just simple math, our students, I think in Chattooga, go approximately an 8-hour day, and you multiply that times 150, and then a 7-hour day times 180, the 7 hours times 180 equals more minutes or more instructional time. What they're referring to in the high school, they have, the students have periods, class periods, and I think by doing the way that they schedule the school day, that those students get an appropriate number of hours to meet graduation requirements.
Do you feel like the board is being good stewards of not only the financial responsibility to the students, but to the students' future overall?
I feel like that the board is being financially responsible, but as far as our children's future, I would answer that resoundingly no. I do not think that they're doing a good job with ensuring that all of our children are getting the best possible education, and I think that's their job, and I think that's very important.
Chattooga High School recently has had their highest graduation rates ever in history. Do you feel like that's an overall indicator of the health of the school system? Or why do you feel like their graduation rates are so good right now?
Because they dropped the graduation test. If you look, there's a direct correlation to no longer requiring the graduation test and the graduation rates going up. They did away with the graduation test in Georgia, and the year that you can look at not just Chattooga County, but if you look at a lot of systems and you look at their graduation rate, there was an increase and all the graduation rates. And it was a kind of a sharp increase in a lot of school systems. And it was when they did away with the graduation, that exit exam. And so I think that's the correlation. I don't think it has anything to do with the 4-day week. It's the correlation of that graduation exit exam.
Is there any kind of test that 12th graders take now to get out? I mean, is there like end of course, or is there end
They
of?
take end of course tests.
And honestly, the scores don't look great across the state of Georgia, so I don't want to start
Right.
sounding like I'm downing Chattooga County
Um,
scores.
As far as your expertise in early education, what do you feel like are some of the challenges that teachers in early childhood education face right now?
Oh my goodness. The workload for teachers is phenomenally heavy. Unless you've been in the classroom, it's hard to imagine that they work really tremendously hard. They do a phenomenal job of educating children that come from, all kinds of different backgrounds. They're having to continuously learn to keep up with the new technologies, curriculum changes, things that are handed down from the state, and limited resources. So there are many challenges that classroom teacher faces. When I think specifically here, that is a strong concern that I have, that the school day is very long for a lot of these children. We need to consider also the time that they're on the bus in the morning and the time that they leave. And I think that makes the day very challenging for those children in early childhood grades.
Again, this is Casie Bryant with AllOnGeorgia, and we just want to thank Dr. Houston for taking the time to answer all these questions. The election will be in November, and she is a Republican candidate for the Board of Education.
Thank you.